This is Regenerative Skills, the podcast helping you to learn the skills and solutions to create an abundant and connected future. I'm your host, Oliver Gaucher. New Society Publishers is your gateway to a regenerative future. They're not just about books, they're about transforming lives and communities through the power of knowledge and action. Their mission is simple: to inspire and empower individuals to create a more just, sustainable, and compassionate world. They envision a future where every person has the tools and resources they need to thrive in harmony with nature, where communities are resilient and interconnected, and where equity and justice are fundamental principles guiding our collective journey. If you subscribe right now to their newsletter at newsociety.com, you'll be the first to receive sneak peeks at new content and get discounts on upcoming title releases. You'll even get an exclusive discount code on your first purchase of books, ebooks, or audiobooks. So sign up today at newsociety.com. Welcome back to another interview from the skill exchange calls that I've been running with climate farmers for our regenerative farming network in Europe. Now, in this session, I had the good fortune of introducing Stefan Sobkowiak to our group. Many of you who've been listening to the show for a while will remember the last interview that I did with Stefan in the last season during the series on agroforestry. Stefan is one of my favorite sources for practical and honest techniques for managing the whole ecology of an orchard, from propagating new tree species through maintenance, pest management, harvesting, and even processing and marketing your products. His film, The Permaculture Orchard, has helped people around the world to transition towards diversified, resilient, and more profitable models of running their tree crop business. His YouTube channel goes even more in depth, as he's always creating videos about the innovations and even the struggle that are going on in his orchard, Miracle Farms in Canada. Now, in this session, we cover a lot of ground in a short time. We talk about how to manage pests and diseases by improving soil health and biodiversity in the orchard. We talk about how to care for the health of your trees for better yields and profit. We talk about integrating other crops and animals into the system for ecological and economic resilience, and how to adapt common methods to your unique climate and context. Now, there's a whole Q&A session that happens after the half-hour interview on these skill exchange calls, which are exclusive to the Climate Farming Network here in Europe. So if you're interested in attending these calls in person, to have your own questions answered by the experts, and to tap into the growing community of farmers, consultants, and educators around Europe, you can register right now at climatefarmers.org. So with all that out of the way, let's hand things over to Stefan. That's actually a good way to transition over as we build this online community and access to more information and resources. Stefan, how are you doing? Great to see you again.
Very good. Sorry for my mistake.
No problem. I know you're a busy guy. It's just great to see you. So what do you say we jump into it? Because I know that the participants here are going to have some more questions towards the end. We've got growers from different parts of Europe. But I will start by giving a little bit of housekeeping and a little introduction to this call. So welcome, everybody. This is another skill building exchange from the Climate Farmers Network. Everybody here is part of our growing network, people who are cultivating different types of food and managing land in the EU area, and increasingly doing so in regenerative ways. And we've invited Stefan here at the request of quite a few of our members because of your incredible experience and knowledge, especially around whole orchard ecosystems. So Stefan Sobkowiak is a pioneer of regenerative and whole ecosystem orchard management on Miracle Farm in Canada. His innovative methods of managing pests and insects through biodiversity, tree crop health through perennial companion planting, and soil health with animal integration have inspired people all over the world. And through his teachings, regardless of your climate or your orchard species, the practices of close observation, nature-inspired patterning, and symbiotic relationships will help you to optimize your orchard business anywhere in the world. Now, just keep in mind that this call is being recorded. If for any reason you don't want to show up on the recording, you can just leave your camera and your microphone off and you won't appear. And let's go right into the first question for Stefan. So let's get an overview about what some of the potential of creating a complete orchard ecosystem is, and what are some of the key differences between that and conventional orchards?
Easiness. Definitely, if it functions as an ecosystem, it functions. If it functions as a monoculture, it's a broken system that you have to keep intervening because there's a whole bunch of parts of the ecosystem that just aren't there. So really that's so nice to not have to deal with this insect or this problem or another. So that's the major one, is how much easier it becomes.
And so it seems like there's a mindset shift in that there are always going to be challenges and things that come up each season. In fact, that's what we were talking about just before you arrived, how the challenges of climatic patterns and weather patterns of this season, either heavy rains and extra humidity and cold in some parts, and droughts and wildfires in others, have caused people to have to react in a way that, it's something different each season. And that doesn't change whether you've got a fully integrated ecosystem or if you're managing it in a conventional way. But what is that difference in mindset? You're looking to complete circuits, close loops, and make sure that all of the elements are in place rather than import them artificially? Or are there some other key observations that are key to managing that system?
I think your word observation is key. I mean, that is often the clue to, this can be done without me having then to intervene. I'll give you an example. In our climate, we get snow. Like, we'll typically have 60 centimeters or more during the winter, covering for 3 months. In the spring, as that snow is melting, we get sun scald. So we get basically a sunburn on the bark of trees because they get very warm in the day, and in the evening, it's usually a high pressure, clear sky. So as soon as the sun goes down, the temperature drops. So we'll hit -10, -15, sometimes 3 hours after sunset. And what happens is the tree can't adjust quickly enough in temperature, and the bark cracks. It basically just splits right off. So I used to have to paint trunks of the trees white just to keep them from getting sun scald, until one day while painting, I realized, I always have to go around this tree because there's a big shrub in front of it. You know what? The shrub being on the south of the tree prevents it from getting sun scald. What if I planted shrubs deliberately in that position, which is the southwest, because that's where it gets the maximum evening or late afternoon sun? And if I would do that, and I could use a crop shrub, not just it was just a wild shrub that had come up, but I could actually plant something that will give me a crop. And so that was kind of and it worked. It worked very well. And so that's one of the goals we have. We should have a fruiting shrub to the southwest of every tree to reduce that effect of sun scald. But that adds the same amount of trees that we have fruiting will give us that many, at least, shrubs that we have fruiting as well. But, I mean, it's the kind of thing where, well, if I did it conventionally or if I did it in a monoculture way, well, that shrub just down and go on with your painting of the shrubs, of the trees. So observation is really one of the key, but I mean, it's the key to permaculture. That's why it's the first principle. So mindset is looking around, seeing what's happening, and trying to ask. And I no longer ask, how can I do it 10% better or 20% better? Which in the end, you think, well, 20%, that's great. No, I look around and I think, how can I do it 10 times better? If I'm going to intervene, if I'm going to do, and if I'm going to plant, and if I'm going to make a change, how can that change make the system, because it really is the system or that task, 10 times better? Could be 10 times quicker, could be 10 times more profitable, whatever it is. So, I mean, those are a few things that aren't in the, I would say, the usual principles of making it better. But certainly thinking of it as an ecosystem and always asking why. Really, we don't ask why do we have this insect? Like I say, my caterpillar teacher, for us, the whole reason we changed the orchard was because of a caterpillar. So we have these tent caterpillars. In Europe, you have the Legionnaire, right? In the southwest of France. And I don't know how far, or if it's in Spain, but they basically create these massive tents. And then you'll have these hundreds or thousands of the tremendous damage to the orchard. Like, we would often get quarter of the trees completely eaten. And when they're completely eaten, that tree isn't going to do anything this year. it won't do anything next year because it couldn't put up any reserves. And so you're 2 out of 3 years, a whole part of the orchard is not doing anything. I used to cut those things off until we had a huge year. And just a quick count, we had at least 1,000 nests of these caterpillars on a small acreage. I mean, we only have 12 acres. And so most of them are in the tops of the trees. So you move a ladder for 1,000 nests. That's a huge job. And they grow so fast. Ended up, I was defeated. I mean, I admitted, okay, you have me. Caterpillar, you got me beaten. I'm done. There's nothing I can do. So I basically just stopped and I said, okay, Caterpillar, what are you trying to teach me? I mean, I got to the point. I mean, you're driven to, you don't have a choice. Something has to change because I am completely beaten. You've got me beaten. And the idea of putting the pesticides, and I could have used even organic pesticides. I was organic. And no, that was not an option to me because that just means I don't know what's going on. I haven't figured it out. And so let me intervene so I could get a quick fix. Well, that's what agriculture is all based on, quick fix. I have this problem, put this product. And that's not how an ecosystem works. So I asked the caterpillar, what's going on? What do I have to do? And why are you here so much? So it was like, bang, clear as day. Well, you've created a buffet for me. I was like, you created a buffet. And I mean, I knew it, but it took a caterpillar, or it's my inner voice, whatever, but it took that question and answer to me to go, okay, that's confirmed. That is the problem. The problem is, as long as the orchard is 3,000 apple trees and nothing else, grass and trees, that's all. As long as it's that of a monoculture, I will continually have these caterpillars. They will not stop because they have a buffet. There's nothing preventing them from marching down the rows, and there were 110 trees in a row. They could start anywhere in the middle and just go in one direction and just keep eating trees. So that was the start of saying, okay, if it's a buffet, I've got to make it less of a buffet. And that's where, I had been teaching permaculture even at that time. And I realized, you know what? I got this orchard. It's far from being permaculture. It's a total monoculture. And I look, my neighbor has corn. My apple orchard isn't different from his cornfield. It's still a monoculture. Okay, I have grass and trees, but it's still a monoculture. And so we going start to, then we ripped out almost the whole orchard and we replanted, which I recommend to people do not do. Don't tear out an orchard that's existing and productive. Buy another piece of land, do it somewhere else, or even overgraft a part of your orchard, but don't tear it all out. It's not, if your orchard is profitable, if it's working, try it somewhere else, but don't tear it. That's a huge hit you take out trees that are generating money and now you no longer have money coming in. And in fact, you have a lot of expenses to replant. But anyway, I did it just because still I'm kind of stubborn and it was like, this is where we're going and this is where we're going to go. And so finally we replanted. We went through a first cycle about 2 years after planting. And it was like, there's caterpillars, but they're in a few trees, but they're not marching the way they would. So it was like, okay, that's interesting. But then I waited another 3 years. Then the trees were starting to produce and the trees were getting bigger and the caterpillars came. And after that second wave of caterpillars, and I realized, wow, the most they've eaten, rather than eating a whole tree and then multiple trees, the most they ate was a part of one branch, which one branch on a tree that has 12, 15 branches, that's not a big deal. And I was like, that was to me the turning point. Now I was convinced that it would work because for 4 or 5 years, I didn't even say anything because I wasn't sure that it would work. And so that's kind of I don't remember even what your question was, Oliver. It's the roundabout way of getting to point out that some of the main differences, first of all, get away from monoculture, absolutely observe. If it's working, try it somewhere else. But don't tear it. That's a huge hit. You take out trees that are generating money and now you no longer have money coming in. And in fact, you have a lot of expenses to replant. and try to have your system mimic an ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story, and I've followed your material for a long time, and I've seen some of the progressions as you've hit these aha moments from the observation and the feedback loops that you're constantly learning from, because you're also trying out new things, and things are coming into different points of maturation and succession as you go along. So there's always something new to react to and observe from, and I've really enjoyed watching your process in that way. Can you talk about some of the aha moments or some of the epiphanies that you've had when it comes to applying nutrition to the trees? Because oftentimes this is seen as one of the areas where you need to bring in some inputs, either making compost or synthetic inputs conventionally. But you have an approach of creating polyculture plantings and other ecosystem benefits from the addition of life to the orchard. Can you talk about that?
I rely on the support species. And so far, I mean, this year we have a huge crop coming. Gee, if I was getting more, I really don't know right off what we would be doing with more of a crop. So we could, at how high is high? Well, I look at it as how high at no cost. This is high enough for no cost. If I wanted to put in extras, gee, sure, I can't say we do zero fertilizing, actually. We do zero in this way of putting compost. We do zero in the way of any addition of fertilizers. I do use whey occasionally. This year we only used twice. We put whey, which is the byproduct of cheese making, and we do run chickens through the orchard. So those do an addition, but definitely not enough. Like, we could use 10 times as many chickens. We could use 15 or 20 sprays of whey, but I'm very happy with the level that it's at. Inputs are a bit of a treadmill, because you could get hooked on inputs and, hey, yeah, it gives a good result. And, farm the sun to the max. That's one of the key things first. Like, if you have bare ground, well, you're just losing sunshine, So I always say the cheapest input by far is water. If you're using compost or fertilizer, but you're not adding water at key times when it's needed, you're spending way more than you need to. Water is by far, as long as you have access to water in abundance, which we do, pumping water for us is about $300 a year. And we're growing on literally a beach sand. Our neighbor is sand dunes. So if we didn't add water, we would be stressing the plants tremendously. But, like, why put fertilizer if you're not going to put water? To me, that's it really doesn't make sense. If you're relying on rain, and Oliver, I know you're in Spain. I mean, you can have some pretty long dry periods. Well, if you could add water even once every 2 weeks through that dry spell, boy, you would be capturing sun. Because if your plant is shutting down, and sometimes shutting down for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, well, how are you? You're not farming the sun. Like, your plant is at a limiting point, and it's limited by water. Doesn't matter that you gave fertilizer. The fertilizer isn't going to be active either. The compost will barely be active because it's waiting to be moistened. So that's a bit my take on inputs.
That's a really good observation, because we do talk a lot about bringing in biology, especially when it comes to improving soil. But if there's no moisture in there, diversity is going to die out. And much like you were talking about with some of the different inputs that you add, whether it's whey, whether it's irrigation timing, you're paying close attention to the developmental stage that your crops or your plants are in, especially with getting to know orchard plants. There are rhythms that they go through as they start to set seed, or when they are putting out flower and they're developing fruit, and they need different things at different times. And you put out some great resources on how to read the developmental stages and tailor your inputs to those, rather than going by a schedule and saying, hey, it's July, we irrigate now, or we do a spray now. but rather marrying that to the development of the tree, which can differ quite a bit over the year. Can you talk about some of the observations and the reactions needed to develop over time so that you're growing and reacting with the plants rather than based on some arbitrary calendar?
Yeah, a few things there. I would, if you can't walk into whatever you're growing, whether it's your garden even, and within 5 seconds, if you can't read that there's something going on, you really need to up your game on observation. I mean, that's so critical because if you, like, we're working on a master class now and we just finished our course on observation. And the whole objective of that course to learn how to observe is that you need to know what is your baseline. This is normal. And anytime you're out of normal, things are doing really well or things are not doing well, that observation should be like within seconds of walking in, you should be able to go, oh, something's not right here. Something's not working. And that's something that you can develop. Sometimes it's visual. It could be auditory. I mean, you could hear that it's very quiet today. Something isn't right. It doesn't matter whatever way you would pick it up. Some people are, can smell things. I can't smell that much in that way, but some people can smell. Some people will taste the soil and know, gee, the soil is really nice now. It's perfect. So that observation is really important. I had a few points. What was the main idea of that question again? Sorry.
No, it's okay. We're just talking about, I guess, the management of all of these cycles and being able to observe what developmental stage that the tree or whatever other crop that you're cultivating is in, rather than going by arbitrary calendars in order to make your interventions.
Right. The most important is flowering, because trees are better indicator than smaller. For example, you can have your crocus come up or, spring bulbs come up, but that's because it's your first 5 centimeters of soil is at a certain temperature. Bang, they take off. But deeper down where the tree roots are mostly, it hasn't warmed up. So flowering, bud break, those are two key indicators. And I say calendar doesn't really mean much. Phenology means much. At what stage for that plant are you? And always keep in mind, doesn't matter. Like this year, for example, we're probably about 16 days ahead of normal year. Like we're harvesting right now, we're harvesting what normally we're harvesting at the end of August. Like that's a big difference. But last year, we were 10 days late through the whole season. So plus or minus, you're talking, it could vary by a month. Any given crop, any given stage could change by a month. So if you go by calendar, you're lost completely. It makes no difference because you're going to miss everything. So instead, you need to go by flowering. We knew by flowering we were already 2 weeks early. So that was, sometimes it catches up a little bit, but this year it's just gotten hotter and things have been getting earlier and earlier. Like that is kind of catching us a bit by surprise, but we were expecting that it would be early, but this early is quite something. So yeah, don't go by the calendar. Go understand the phenology. And I would say get on I think every government does some scouting, whether it's for conventional growers, especially in orchards, or even organic. They'll be scouting the insects. They'll be scouting the diseases as they show up. They'll be monitoring the weather. And they can tell you, well, codling moth, we caught the first codling moth today. They're emerging. They usually recommend have your spray ready. But for me, it's have my traps ready. So that's important. Get on. I mean, that's a whole team of people who are out there scouting and checking the phenology of certain crops, and they're reporting. So I just get emails. Okay, this is what's happening. And listen, you pay through your taxes. Take advantage of these services, which usually are free. They used to be paid, but now they're free. Just get an email or get a text message, whatever. And this is the condition. This is what's happening. People are, that's a lot of resources used to bring you that great information. And even if it's for conventional, but it still applies if you're growing, mangoes, or if you're growing whatever it is, there should be some element of scouting going on.
Yeah, that's a very valuable resource, and I hope that we can find and put links for all of those as they pertain to different regions if you haven't been able to find them wherever you are. Let's get now to a question that always comes up eventually when we're talking about creating as resilient and diverse ecosystems as possible and still managing the necessity of efficiency and ease of work for the business side of things. I mean, you can't just have one of every different plant scattered all different and wild in an ecosystem and hope to have an efficient and profitable business. How do you reconcile those things in your own business model, keeping in mind that you're not selling to a commodities market for weight values, that you have a very different business model for your orchard?
Yeah, that's people have commented that's probably the biggest contribution of the permaculture orchard model is to be able to have diversity. Like we'll typically have 5 different cultivars of apples and 3 of pears in a given row, then some plums. So there's a mix of the trees through a row. Well, how do you do that? How can you have a whole row with between 40 trees and 100 trees? How can you have that many trees and a diversity and still have some kind of logic to it? So we call it the grocery store concept. And it's the same idea as you walk in a grocery store. It's not all one thing in that grocery store aisle. There's a whole bunch of things. So what we do is all we have to know is when is that crop harvested? Well, within apples, we can harvest from the end of July, end of October. We've got cultivars for that whole season. So how can we reconcile that? We just need to know if we want to put blue pearmain. Well, blue pearmain is harvested from middle of October to the end of October. So we divide each month into 3 10-day windows. And then those windows, we'd say, okay, it's the beginning of August till the 10th of August. That's early August. Then we have the middle of August, which is the 10th to the 20th or 11th to 20. And then 21 to 30, that's the end of August. Now, in those 3 periods in August, if we have 5 cultivars of fruit that are going to harvest, we need to know where do they fit in that window. And then we just plant that. And we try to have enough that we can fill a whole row at that date. So that makes it easy. I don't pick the fruit mostly. I don't pick much at all. We pick a little bit for a little kiosk. Most of it is people coming, and that's everybody who picks has to be a member of the farm. So we get paid in advance. And then whatever they pick, they pay for as well. And so it's a you pick model with that diversity. Well, actually for you pick, it's the best model because when we had 11 people, we got enough. What else do you have? I didn't have anything. So now when they come and they can pick 40 kilos of apples and 10 kilos of pears, and then they'll pick up, 2 kilos of plums. Oh, and you still have herbs. Great. Look there's still some small berries. Yes, we'll get that too. Oh, and you have some vegetables in there. And the nice thing, if you have vegetables that you don't have to harvest, that's fantastic. Like, why not let people pick what they want? We give ourselves so much work for nothing. And harvest is, don't make it light of it. If any of you, have harvested, that is a big job. And in all fruit productions, because I used to teach fruit production, and we'd look at the ag economics of each of the crops. And an average right across the board for fruit is 40% of the cost of producing that crop is harvest, packing. And we underestimate packing. But if you put fruit in a box, that box is going to cost you anywhere from, let's say, for us, it's $1 to $1.50. Well, if you sell that box for $10 and you got $1.50 in a box, that adds up pretty fast. That adds up fast. So 40%, if you can bypass that. And when I teach in Europe, God, I can't get it. I really can't get it. You guys have the perfect situation in Europe. You have population everywhere. Anywhere I go, I've asked, and only one place have I found somebody When I say, do you have 30,000 people within 30 minutes of where you are? Everybody's like, well, of course, everybody has that. In one place in the center of France, they didn't. But I was like, for us, it's normal. An hour from a major city, an hour, that's way too far. And it still works for me. But in Europe, the few places that I've heard that did U-pick, they are crushing it. They're absolutely like, they don't want to say it because it works so well. They're making so much money and they're saving so much money because they don't have to pick. And if people are going through the orchard and they see a nice rock and they go, oh, I love this rock, I want to take this rock home, and they put it in their basket, and you weigh the basket and there's a rock in it, you don't care if there's a rock in it. Like, who cares? Do you want to take that rock? Take the rock. You're paying for it, you know? So that's where, God, I mean, Europe, I can't believe how come you guys aren't going crazy for U-pick. You are in a better situation. Everybody knows about going to U-pick. It's culturally established for a long time. But the first ones who do it in Europe, let me tell you, you'll be in people's mind as going, oh yeah, go to Oliver, go there and you can get figs and pomegranate. I don't know, everything else you can grow, Oliver, you know what I mean? And then the more diversity you add, the more people buy. To give you an example, if we have 2 colors of plums, we sell 2 times more. We had 2 kinds of raspberries, 2 colors. They're both harvested at the same time, but we sell twice as much just because now there's 2 colors of raspberries. Like, I don't care. If people just want to give me more money, I'm not against it, you know? Don't make it more complicated. Focus on growing it and then make the harvesting people's problem. So for example, right now, because we're early and it was hard to schedule the dates early in the season because I wasn't sure if we were going to continue to be early, but we were. So I put dates 1 week early, but in fact, I should have put dates 2 weeks earlier. And so we're getting caught with one type of apple that has produced a huge load. And so I'm going to have an open day that wasn't scheduled. And what I do is, if I have a problem, right now I have a problem, we're going to be losing like a few tons of apples if we don't pick these fruit. So since that's going to be such a problem, I want to turn it to an opportunity. So we're giving away a box, which is 18 kilos as a member. That box would normally be $60. But membership costs $60. So people figure, hey, I can join as a member for free because I was going to pick these apples anyway. And then every time they come, I have something else free. Not always that valuable, but there's always something free. Sometimes it's flowers, sometimes it's herbs, sometimes it's small fruit. Whatever is a problem to me, whatever we have so much of that we're just going to lose, I give it away. Because I know that because they came for that one item, like they saw that we were having free apples and they came. Very rarely do the people come just for that. They're there. Oh, you have garlic today. Yeah, we have fresh garlic. Okay, I'll take, $10 or $20 of garlic. And you got to have eggs. That's true. I got to get some eggs. So there's $20 of eggs and so on and so on. So focus on producing, focus on designing the system to be easy. And if you use those grocery store aisles, people, as they walk and they see the diversity, they will pick more. I've seen both, because I saw when we had just apples and, 400 trees of the exact same cultivar. That's work for you. But when other people come and take care of that work, it's really nice.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic example, especially like you said, for the European context, but also for people who have smaller plots of land where you can put in a ton of diversity that might be difficult to optimize and make really efficient for harvesting yourself, or might not make financial sense to bring in a team to do that harvest work that could still serve as a community asset that is profitable for your context. I love those ideas. Now, we're getting a little low on time, and I still want to make sure that we have time for listener questions. But before we go into that, can you tell us what you would give as advice for people who are just starting out or who perhaps have tree systems already and are looking to make a transition to a more whole ecosystem regenerative approach?
I would say, look at the film. We did a film a few years ago, the Permaculture Orchard. It's really a mini course. I would say start there because a lot of people got started just with that. That's all they had and they got started. Yeah. It gives you enough to start. So knowing is one. And then I never emphasize enough to just do it. Like just start. It'll never be perfect. You'll always, that's why permaculture principle of the feedback loop. You do it, you try it, you observe, and you adjust, and you make a change. So start small. I say start with 2 trios. That's like 6 trees. And just start with that. Learn, because you'll learn as much with 2 trios as with 500 trees. Honestly, you will, because you'll start see dynamics happening. And that will be your feedback, because you have to be convinced. I can't convince you. You can hear me talking. You could watch the film, but you are not convinced. Like I was not convinced. I wasn't sure this would work. He talks about this Mawson in his book, but I wasn't convinced that would work until I did it and until I saw a few cycles of production. And that's really the key, is you have to see it and then be convinced. And then it's like, okay, I want to do 10 times more. No problem, because you already have the foundation. Well, I won't put this plant anymore, but I'll put more of this one. And so that's where that start and the feedback, and yeah, get the films for sure.
Now, before we wrap this up, just remember that these episodes are only the beginning of the learning resources, design and coaching services, in-person courses, and interactive community that are available through Regenerative Skills. The Discord server is our free community where you can connect with other like-minded listeners, exchange ideas, stories, tips, and resources, as well as interact with me directly and quite a few former guests from this show. Our Instagram account @regen_skills is the best place to see the projects that me and the team are working on, both for clients and collaborators, as well as on our own properties. I'll also be announcing the certification courses, workshops, and gatherings that we've got coming up later this year. If you're interested in getting dedicated support for your own project, you can now schedule a free planning session with one of our team members through the request form on our website. You can also find all the links, show notes, and past resources there at regenerativeskills.com. We truly believe that no matter your experience, your knowledge, abilities, resources, or background, you can be a powerful force for regeneration on this planet, and we're here to help you find your path. So as always, remember to keep taking those little steps every day towards a regenerative future, and I'll be right by your side along the way.